So just to introduce everyone, can each of you introduce yourselves, starting with Lorna?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm glad we get the chance to co-create today. And I want to welcome to Neil. Hi, Neil.
Hi, Lorna.
Okay, Diane.
Hello, everybody. My name is Diane Perry with Earthy and Stewardship. I'm here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and nice to be here.
Wonderful. And Neil, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us what you do, just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, Neil Wilson. I'm an ecologist and conservation biologist, ethologist, and paleontologist, and various other forms of expertise that I have. But primarily an ecologist and conservation biologist. Ethology as well is very important in terms of the elephants and the rhino and so on that are receiving the bitter end of the Asian poison. Yeah, my passion is the conservation of nature. Nature needs all the help she can get because of the biodiversity apocalypse that we presently in. Sixth global mass extinction, which is anthropogenic, it's human induced. So we are waging a war against this, against the forces that they are determined to destroy the planet, essentially. I'm talking about the Chinese and the Vietnamese and the Asians. Yeah, so but essentially I'm a scientist and using my scientific knowledge to help nature. My vision is for nature, for a paradigm shift, or not it's a massive shift, for nature to be respected and valued and respected, which certainly isn't the case on the planet now. We've got a very precarious, very dangerous situation with the planet, in fact, past the tipping point in terms of global warming. And so we don't know where we're going in terms of the trajectory of the planet. Well, we actually do. It's a path to oblivion. Because that tipping point's already passed. The reason why I say it is because the greenhouse gases, as you probably know, carbon dioxide is an important one, but more importantly is methane, which is being released in millions, probably billions of metric tons from the permafrost in Siberia. And the permafrost is melting, and there's no way of reversing that unless we can bring on an ice age, which we can't. So that's a process that's unfolding that will carry on and will carry on because humans aren't changing their course. They're continuing to spew out greenhouse gases, coal mines, burning of coal-fired power stations, and all the other impacts on the planet, plastic pollution, the seas, the fish are chowing plastic, we're eating plastic. It's a recipe for absolute disaster. And yeah, we have to somehow turn the tide. And what I would propose is that people come together and act in unison. But the chance of that happening is quite slim, because you know what people are like. They like to do their own thing. They like, in terms of funding and competition and all the bad human attributes, egotism, narcissism, you name them, which are standing in the way of a solution. Yeah, so that's me. Involved in a war. And yeah, I consider myself as an eco warrior. I served 2 years in the South African Defence Force, and if I had agreed with the political system, I probably would have been Special Forces. But now I'm Special Forces for Nature.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Neil. So really, pretty much that's in incredible alignment with everything we're about. We're about help save the world. Diane, can you tell us about your Earthian stewardship?
Hi, Neil. I loved your conversation. It's very much in line with what we're all trying to do here. Earthian stewardship is trying to bring like-minded people together so that if somebody is working on something in one part of the world and they may have the same problem or they're working on the same thing on the other part of the world, that they'll have easy access to each other, because my goal is to have more actionable items addressed. It seems like there's a lot of studies, there's a lot of talk, but it's like getting actual action to happen is a little challenging. So I did some activist work in Central Florida. The water quality was so bad, the alligators, had died in the lake. And so they found out that the nutrients that were coming from the major big lake there, Lake Apopka, was actually just kind of killing most of the varieties of fish except the chatfish, which is what the alligators were eating. And it had too much like beaver or didn't have, or I can't remember exactly what it was. But basically the alligator's nervous system was shutting down and they were drowning because of their diet, because of the quality of the water. And so then when I came to Fort Lauderdale, everybody here is interested not only in the rivers and lakes in Central Florida, but now the ocean. And so now I've been involved with like 1,000 Mermaids and Urban Farming Institution, which of course, if you bring in the food and if you're planting local resources for people, there's a huge issue with, big manufacturing of food, right? And I think that's one of the things that you want to talk about. So I'm just trying to bring everybody together to find a way to make the planet heal the fastest. So whatever we can do to help her is what I want to do.
Excellent.
Thanks, Diane. That's awesome. Yes, there's so much that we can discuss about many other different topics, but this particular meeting today, we're focusing on the concept of food. Just before we start, just as a warning to anybody who takes our advice or whatever, we're not general practitioners, we're not functional medicine doctors or herbalists. We're just giving our own lessons that we've learned, putting it out there, and if you use it, you do so at your own risk. So just for American audiences where they live in a very litigious society and people get sued for all sorts of nonsense. So just putting that out there. All right, today we'll be talking about food from our own knowledge and experiences. How can we help ourselves live healthier lives and help save our world just by changing the food we eat? You can talk about, or we can talk about, any experiences that we've had with food, anything we would like to share for the benefit of others and our world. Things like, does it matter what we eat? And how does it matter? How does our diet affect us individually? And how does it affect our environment, which we are collectively manifesting as a result of what we eat and drink? What should we watch out for with different diets? What are we as humans? How did we evolve? There are many, many factors. So you can talk about anything you think about that's important regarding food and our environment for the benefit of others through this video medium. Ultimately, when I get all of the videos out there, people will be able to look at this stuff and learn from us. Now, who would like to begin? You would like to, Diane?
Sure, I'm happy.
Go ahead. The floor's yours.
So, thank you. Well, food to me is very important because number one, I love food, right? So food for me has been very important in all my life. And so growing up in the Midwest, we always had our family that had little local gardens. And so eating out of the local gardens was always, a real treasure. And as I got older and we started eating out with fast food restaurants, I noticed that my health was not as good as it was when I was younger. And so getting away from the fast foods
and reading labels was very important. So now if I go to the store, I always take any packaging, I read it. If it has preservatives or food coloring or high fructose corn syrup or GMOs, I don't buy it. And so now I only buy the fresh foods. And so recently, what I've discovered is that even a lot of our fresh vegetables, because of how they're farmed, don't have the nutritional value. So I am now returning to buying from local growers. So finding a local grower in your area is just hugely important, because now you're going and you're getting something that was picked maybe yesterday or today or the day before, and the nutrients in soil that's tended to by human beings is more nutritionally beneficial. So mass production of food they've used so many chemicals that the dirt that it's growing in is actually dead. And so then they have to spray more chemicals, and now you're getting a plant that's been grown not out of like all of the ecology and micronutrients that are in soil that gives us all the vitamins that we need. It's just really empty food. And so it's just so important to put into your body healthy food. So all I can say is that if you can find a local grower, local places that produce things, you will feel so much better in eating clean food. The closer you can get to something that comes out of the ground, and you know where that soil is, what the people, how they're raising that food, the healthier you'll be.
That's awesome stuff. That's brilliant. Anyone else like to follow on?
Hi, this is
Lorna?
Lorna.
Okay, go
Lorna?
ahead, Lorna.
Okay, I grew up with fresh fruits and vegetables, even though I didn't like them as a kid or even a young adult. But I recognize my mother made a big effort. It was very normal to eat good food. But it was not until I got here to the US and I was introduced to yoga and meditation and become a vegetarian. So I'm not a vegetarian now, but I eat almost out of 7 days, easy 4 or 5 days as a vegetarian. But what got me into like and appreciate vegetables and fruits and stay away from high proteins back then, I'm talking about the early 80s, that changed my preference for food. And I used to feel very healthy. I have been on and off, for so many years. And I cook every day except Sunday or sometimes Saturday. And I consume a lot of fresh stuff, but I know I can take it to a better level because I still buy 60 or 70% of my veggies and fruits from the supermarket. I only go to one grove that has tomatoes and it has citrus. I feel in heaven when I'm there and I pick up those two items from there. But I know I should go back to what I used to work for me. And I end up, if I go out with friends to eat, I cannot eat the heavy stuff at the restaurants. I can't. So I end up looking for, the light stuff, or I eat something before I go so I don't get into trouble with myself.
Thank you so much, Lorna. That's really interesting. We all go through phases when we can eat like great foods and we can go to like these little farmers markets and we have to like rediscover what is best for us, because we tend to go the right way and then lose our way and then go the right way and lose our way. But it's this continuous process of constantly being aware of who you are and your health and constantly try to recorrect and live in alignment with true health, and that will result in greater happiness and a greater quality of life. Anyone else who would like to talk?
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
I would like.
Okay, Brendan.
When up into our family, the eating a lot of junk food and a lot of meat and everything, which actually caused very bad, how to put it, indigestion and very bad sleeping habits and all that, which affected me greatly. And basically what Dennis is talking about is what he took us from the beginning when I got there. He took us through this whole thing of what to eat, when to eat it, and how much of a quantity to eat. And it actually helped us a lot.
Let's go to Neil.
Okay, food's extremely important, vital, not only for myself, but for the planet. We're part of a whole, many different kinds of ecosystems. Food is largely grown in terrestrial ecosystems and wetland ecosystems. Also aquatic, of course, hydroponics and aquaculture. Also all those aquatic, wetland and terrestrial ecosystems. Now, I'm a vegan, and that is based on ecological, animal welfare, and various other grounds. In terms of ecology, the earth cannot afford to support billions of people who are eating meat. And in any case, the transfer of energy is completely inefficient via cattle, sheep, and so on. They consume vast quantities of food and produce a small percentage of that. They convert a small percentage of that into animal protein. That's highly inefficient. The earth cannot support that. If we were 1 billion people, which possibly the coronavirus is designed to do to lower the human population, it's still a lot, and we need to farm ecologically. We need to farm, as you mentioned last night, Dennis, using polyculture, not permaculture. We've got to go better than that. We've got to plant our crops and so on amongst indigenous species, and we have companion planting to repel pests and so on. We cannot use insecticides and herbicides, which have wrecked ecosystems, literally, and wrecking the sea, because they're washed into the sea, together with all the other forms of pollution. So the rivers, wetlands, and the sea become a dumping ground for our agrochemicals, which is completely unsustainable. In fact, it's crippled those ecosystems. They have become unproductive. Just the farming technique in itself of monoculture drives a terrestrial, wetland, and aquatic system into a moribund state. Those systems die because they're just being totally extended beyond what they can support. So we've got to learn to farm, as you said, Dennis, polyculture is the way to go. Permaculture, I think you said, Dennis, polyculture is using indigenous species interspersed between crops and so on to get a more realistic ecosystem. It's an agricultural ecosystem, it's artificial, but it's more natural than a permaculture system as I understand it. Permaculture, as I understand it, is straightforward organic farming things, crops and fruit organically, not using pesticides, not using herbicides, only using the wonderful forces of nature. But the polyculture is incorporating indigenous species in the mix to replenish the nutrients in the soil, the nitrogen, the phosphates, all the macro and micronutrients will be replenished more easily with a polyculture approach than with a permaculture approach. But maybe it should be a gradation. We can't have unilateral decisions and so on. So people who can do permaculture, go for it. Yeah. People who can do polyculture, better. Yeah. But anyway, my veganism is based on ecological principles. Being an ecologist, I understand them very, very well. I know what the tolerance and the capability of the earth is in terms of soil ecology, the hydrology, the geomorphology, all the drivers of processes on earth and aquatic systems. Then animal welfare, of course, is extremely important to me. I hate suffering. I detest suffering. My body line for suffering. Animal suffering. Animals that are completely defenseless. Cannot. The cattle, I've been into one of the biggest abattoirs in the southern hemisphere in Botswana. and it was a shocking experience. Those cattle are absolutely terrified as they brought to this abattoir. You can see in their eyes, they are terrified. They smell death from the abattoir. The smells coming out of that abattoir of the shot cattle, sheep, whatever. They smell it miles and miles away. We cannot treat living organisms like that, even though biblically it says, we must use and stock for our own purposes. I don't believe that. I don't support that idea whatsoever. We have to prevent suffering of animals. But you may argue, well, plants can also communicate. How do we know? How do we know that? How do we not know that plants are also suffering? And it has been proven scientifically that plants do communicate, and they do possibly suffer. So yeah, we're in sort of, if you can bring that on board, then we're between a rock and a hard place. What do we do actually? What do we eat to survive?
There's humane ways to do everything.
Yeah, but I'm sure that there's a solution. But look, that's an extreme. Like most people listening to this conversation would think that I'm sort of can be certified. So essentially, it's ecology, animal welfare. There are various other things that come into the mix as well that support veganism. But ecology deals with a lot of those factors in terms of energetics and everything that goes to support. Everything's about energy in the universe. And we need to realize that. And many people don't. Just in terms of buying stuff in supermarkets, I will be particular, and I will take it up with the manager, and I'll take it up with the head office of Woolworths, for example, in South Africa. Palm oil, for one. Sugar. Sugar has destroyed the coastal plains of many places on the earth. Brazil, South America, Africa, massive areas planted with sugarcane. And those ecosystems, the wetland ecosystems, the rivers, you look at the KZN, the KwaZulu-Natal coastline, and the coastal plain, it's massacred. The impacts are massive, highly significant, all because of poor planning and allowing farmers to do what they want, which is unbelievable, because all those ecosystems have gone now. We could bring them back. The cost of bringing them back is massive. That's something we need to bear in mind. As an ecologist, I understand the costs, not only the ecological costs, but the financial costs of restoring ecosystems. It is massive. And I've dealt with massacred ecosystems all over Africa, where people are incompetent. They do not know how to farm. And with the result that they destroy the land, the waters, the wetlands, etc., that they are actually relying on. It's not necessarily their fault. Maybe a lack of education, lack of government input, lack of agricultural extension officers, which used to be prevalent in South Africa, which I don't see anymore, advising farmers about best practice, etc. So there are massive problems in the whole food generation process. But each one of those problems needs to be identified, prioritized, and tackled. Otherwise, together with global warming, we're stuffed because we're just going along a haphazard route, following a haphazard route, hit and miss, don't really know what we're doing, even though, farmers in South Africa, dedicated farmers with great experience will argue that they know what they're doing. But their monocultures are desecrating the land, the rivers, the sea. So, as you say, it requires a whole paradigm shift. The food processing alone requires that. I would say to solve the whole situation, we need to identify all the problems. I can think of many in terms of agriculture and current day practices. Palm oil, for example, I mentioned it. The orangutans, there are 3 species of orangutan in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, that are on the brink of extinction because of humans and their farming practices and the planting of palm oil trees. If you look, when I go shopping, as I think I started off saying, but I didn't actually finish. When I go shopping, I look at the ingredients of every single product I buy, and I know them. Having done chemistry and chemistry and so on at varsity, with combined biology and ecology and so on, zoology, botany. I know those ingredients. I know what are harmful to the ecosystems, and I don't buy them. And moreover, I will take that product to the manager of the store and I'll say, why are you selling this? Do you know what damage it causes to various ecosystems? And he'll look at me as if I'm insane. And he may say, well, look, we can't change it instantly. Well, I say, well, Jim, well, you need to start changing. And he may get a bit stroppy and obstreperous. And I'll say, listen, I want to speak to your head office. And I'll get the number. Woolworths are particularly good about that, actually. They put me in touch with the head office, with the environmental person who's in charge of environment for Woolworths, wherever they operate, nationally and even internationally, because they operate in Australia as well. But a response I got from Woolworths about palm oil was absolutely disgraceful. They just passed it off. They said, oh, well, we get our supplies from Europe, and we don't actually know where they come from. Well, I told them that's totally unacceptable. And I threatened them. You've got to do that. I threatened them. I said, either you correct your practices, find out where you're sourcing that palm oil. Where in Indonesia does it come from? Where in the Amazon does it come from? Where in Africa does it come from? Otherwise, I will launch a program, a campaign to bring you down. And unfortunately, with humans, and you people disagree with me, but you have to hit them head on. Otherwise, they just carry on. They do what they want to. They'll choose the most cost-effective, probably most high-impact option. They couldn't be bothered at the end of the day. Really, they couldn't. They're not interested. Biodiversity apocalypse, sixth global mass extinction or not. Interested in their profits, in their short-term gains. I'm pretty skeptical of humanity, I must say, just through past experience. And I think we've got a massive battle ahead of us. War, actually, to try and change people's perceptions, their understanding, the rubbish they taught at school. I mean, when they should be taught actual meaningful stuff, they're not. They're taught a whole lot of rubbish. I went through the schooling system, I know. My daughter and sons went through the schooling system. I know exactly what they were taught in terms of life skills and what's really important for the survival of the planet. They're not taught, they're taught none of that. They may just sort of glibly cover ecology. You know how fundamentally important ecology is. Absolutely vital. So it's not only food, it's education. There's a whole lot of ancillary, or not even ancillary, supporting systems that need to be dealt with when considering the food system. That monocultures are out. I would say organic farming, definitely permaculture, and preferably polyculture. And then when you go shopping, examine all the constituents of the product. I mean, palm oil, ice cream, soaps, you name it. It's in those products. And the companies know that the opposition against palm oil is growing, and they hide the palm oil. They hide it, and so it's not always that easy to detect on the ingredients. Sometimes it's completely missing. Sometimes it's completely deceptive. But most countries have labeling legislation. If you deceive the public through your mislabeling, intentional mislabeling, you can be sued. I'm not sure what it's like in Spain and the US, but in South Africa, that is the case. And anyway, yeah, I've dealt with a whole lot of issues, and that's all I've got to say for the moment. Thank you for having the opportunity to do so.
That's wonderful. Thank you for an incredible thought journey there. Just a few things that came up in my thoughts when you were going on. It's really the power of our purchases are fundamentally important. The paradigm shift is what we talk about. And the paradigm shift is really about changing our value and belief system from a taking, plundering, fear of scarcity value and belief system, which our religions and our schooling systems and whatever all teach, to a love-based value and belief system, which is all about caring, ecosystems, nurturing, sharing, and changing our whole economic system to being a natural living system. That's really how it works. The sun shines, the plants grow, we eat the plants we grow. So moving away from our monetary and product-based way of life to be growing locally in polyculture, which is I've got some incredible links to natural agriculture, which is like an incredible thing, actually developed by a guy by the name of Masanobu Fukuoka. He's a Japanese guy, and he developed a system where you gather a whole lot of seeds, like indigenous seeds, and all of the variety of food seeds that you want, and you crush clay into clay powder, and you wet the seeds, and then you roll the seeds in. There are different techniques, but basically you coat seeds in clay dust so that the birds and the rats don't eat them, and you literally cast the seeds on the field. And there's a whole lot of other techniques, but I've got the videos in the links, and I'll put my whole speech presentation in the links so that you guys can read through and go through all of these different amazing things that can make a really important difference.